Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome today's guest. His name's Dr. Cedric Bryant. He's the President and Chief Science Officer for the American Council on Exercise, which is a non-profit that helps people adopt active lifestyles. Hi Cedric.
Hi, Sophie. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Cool. So, for people who don't know you yet, can you just give everyone a little bit more of an overview of what you do?
Yes, I serve as the President and Chief Science Officer for the American Council on Exercise, also known as ACE Fitness. And what our mission really is to get people moving. And people oftentimes mistake that for a singular focus on exercise or activity because of our name, the American Council on Exercise. However, it really entails more than that. We really are committed to helping individuals adopt and maintain healthy lifestyle behaviors. Being more physically active is one of those important behaviors.
Okay, and how long have you been doing this for? What does your role look like?
Sure. I have been with the council for almost 20 years now, and we do a number of things. We educate, train, and certify exercise professionals and health coaches who work with the public. We also provide information directly to consumers that are written at an appropriate level on anything from how to do various exercises, how to construct a basic workout for a beginner, basic tips in terms of how to better handle stress, how to adhere to proper nutrition guidelines. So we try to be a resource for both the professional as well as the consumer.
Oh wow, so that's very broad.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And one of the things that we're probably most noted for in the eyes of consumers is that we sponsor a lot of research that's aimed at answering some of the questions that many consumers have when they look at various options for being physically active. I don't think there's an exercise product or program that we haven't studied in some fashion.
Wow. Well, I'm very excited to have you here. So let's jump straight in. Um,
Sure.
in terms of the pandemic and the current situation that people find themselves in, they're stuck at home. What kind of challenges do you think people are facing at the moment, specifically with respect to physical activity?
Well, I think there are a couple things. One of the things is that for all of us, our normal routines have been disrupted. For many of us, if we were gym goers or we may have, been outside without restrictions in terms of things like social distancing and so forth, we really had a lot of options available to us in terms of kind of, taking advantage of being physically active. The other thing too that I think that's a challenge is that not only are we sheltered in or with the stay-at-home orders, we also have the challenge that because our routines have been disrupted and many of us it might cause us to be more isolated, and also the fact that we hear a lot of bad news on an ongoing basis, and so all those things can kind of create the perfect storm where we might be suffering from a number of emotional and psychological issues, which sometimes can rob us of our motivation to want to be physically active. A lot of people become anxious. They might, come a little down and just really stressed. I mean, this is a pretty stressful time for a lot of people because of all the uncertainties that exist with this pandemic. And so all those things can kind of create the perfect unhealthy storm, if you will, where we just lack the motivation to care for ourselves.
Yeah, I think you made a really valid point there that it's not just the fact that it's different in terms of how you're being active, but also different in terms of how you're feeling about it, how you're
Mm-hmm.
motivating yourself. Um, yeah, it's definitely it's a big change for a lot of people.
Oh, it is, yes.
So I would love to hear from your perspective. Do you have any practical suggestions or resources or advice that people who are in this situation might find helpful?
Sure, I think one of the things I really always encourage people to do is that some activity is better than none, and more is better than some. And so just look for any and every opportunity to incorporate movement into your kind of new routine, if you will. So I think many of us find ourselves in this position where we have headsets on and we're on video conferences or phone conference calls. And what I encourage people to do is look for ways to try to turn that into a more active endeavor. So for example, if you're on a phone call and you have a headset, just try to get up and walk around and move while you're on that call. If we find ourselves probably in front of the television more than what's normal and typical, use the commercials as activity breaks. So I like to think of it as, rather than going to the fridge to snack, think of the commercials as being an activity snack. And so it might involve, for the first commercial, maybe you do a plank for 30 seconds. For the next commercial, maybe you do some body weight squats. For the next commercial, maybe you do some modified push-ups, or maybe you do some jumping jacks, or maybe you play Simon Says with your kids. Just think of ways in which to be creative about incorporating activity into your normal routine as much as possible. And then the other things, I think, is if you can kind of be intentional and purposeful about scheduling activity on your calendar. So whether it's, a lunch break, a mid-afternoon break, if depending upon where you're located, if you can go outside for a walk, for a bike ride. And for those who are home with children, really try to return to being a child yourself and incorporate some play. And so maybe it's playing hopscotch, jump rope. You can play, I would call it flag tag. So rather than traditional tag where you're actually touching the person, you can have cloth or clothing that you have on your sides, and it's pulling the cloth or clothing off, the flag, if you will, that signifies the person who's been tagged. Your kids will love it, and I think most adults will be surprised that they'll love it as well, because one of the things that unfortunately happens to us as we get older and more mature, we forget how to play and enjoy physical movement.
Yeah, and I think people are spending more time with their kids now as well. So it's
Mm-hmm.
reminding them to be playful and to think about things a bit differently. That's one of
Yes,
the things I love about being around kids.
exactly.
But yeah, I think you're right that the creativity is really important now, because whereas before there was that structure and there was
Mm-hmm.
more of an organized type of exercise,
Mm-hmm.
now it's just whatever you have around you. It's your own body. I actually used some cans of soup the other day for my weights in my workout.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, because you just work with what you have. So I think sometimes people set really high expectations for themselves with, doing a certain amount of time or a certain intensity or in a
Mm-hmm.
certain way and committing to a big program, but it doesn't have to be that, that big of a goal.
Exactly. And the other thing that I love you saying that you use soup cans for your dumbbells, in essence. And the beauty of the human body is that our muscles are what we call a motor fiber. They're not sensory fibers where they don't necessarily see and know what we're using to challenge them. They just respond to the challenge. So it doesn't matter if you're using soup cans in your case, or if I'm using dumbbells. The muscles are going to respond in exactly the same way.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So are there any resources or websites or any other places where people might go to learn more about this kind of thing?
Sure, and that's really been one of the positive unintended consequences that I've seen with regard to this pandemic, is that many organizations are offering a wide variety of free resources and tools available to allow people to meet their various needs. Our website, we always have a wealth of options and resources for people, because it's our existence is to get people moving. And so ours is one that I would naturally recommend, which is www.acefitness.org. And there are things from an extensive exercise library that will demonstrate exercises and activities for virtually any part of your body. And there are exercises that are on there for access to different levels of equipment. So if you just have your body, as you mentioned, there are a number of exercises and routines that you can follow There's also things for people who might have, exercise bands and balls and other objects, to people who might have a home gym. So we try to have something for people across the spectrum, if you will. And then also the World Health Organization has some very good basic tools for encouraging people to be physically active. As a matter of fact, a good friend of mine, Dr. Fiona Bull, she just did a morning podcast giving people tips and ideas for how to incorporate more physical activity during this time.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left, so let's talk about this a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So, for people who are struggling on the motivation side,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, I mean, I'm one of these people that tend to do more exercise when I'm in a social setting. So, for me to do something on my own at home, it's harder to motivate myself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any suggestions for those kinds of challenges around like actually wanting to do it and making the time for it?
Sure, and motivation really it's a challenge for many of us when it comes to physical activity under the best of circumstances. So it's not a surprise that during these unusual circumstances it's even more of a challenge. And what I try to encourage people to do is to really try to focus on things that really matter to you. So kind of focus on how it makes you feel. Does it make you feel in a better mood? Does it allow you to better handle kind of the stress and the bad news that we're getting inundated for? Does it give you more energy? Is it helping you to sleep better? Focus on all those things, but also look to try to, you said you're kind of that social exerciser in terms of your activity personality. So for you, what I'd recommend is try to smartly take advantage of technology as an example to try to connect with others where you can be exercising. So there it could be either doing things through kind of a Zoom group exercise class with some friends. It could be taking advantage of various resources where you could be led in a group activity. Also, you could connect with with an individual if you're going for a walk, headset, phone, and you can catch up, with dear friends that you haven't perhaps been in contact with. You can also, again, using technology, you could set up little kind of friendly challenges with friends and colleagues just to try to kind of serve as that kind of, team motivation, if you will.
Yeah, I think once you start looking for them, you realize they're
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Because there's a group that I'm a part of. They usually host a lot of events, but
Mm-hmm.
during this time, they've decided to do a fitness challenge, and so they have this
Yes.
big spreadsheet, and they're saying, right, everyone's committing to doing a workout 3 times a week, and on average, we need to get X number of workouts, and that it's
Right.
a 3 month challenge, and so we're all in it together, and we're all supporting each
Exactly.
other, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
nice to just know that it's not just me and just know that everyone else is out there doing it as well. And it's strange, but it's you still have that sense of community. It
Yes.
helps.
And I think the real thing is that you'd have to be a little bit more thoughtful, and a little bit more intentional, because there are some additional barriers, but there's certainly ones that I think most of us can easily overcome.
Yeah. And I think also asking people in your network, asking friends and
Mm-hmm.
colleagues what they do can give you some ideas. Because I was very lucky that I was already doing some dance classes and some
Uh-huh.
aqua aerobics classes. And both companies decided to take everything online. So we now do everything via Zoom, and it's a
Yes.
completely different type of class, but we still have a group and we meet every week and we do the class. But so many companies have taken things online now. So
Mm-hmm.
even if the organizations that you normally would go to aren't offering that, there are, endless options now.
There are limitless options. You're right, and I think the other thing too is that that's really beautiful is that um, many of the professionals in this space, they have a simple passion for wanting to help people and engage people. And so you'll find that many of the professionals are offering no cost or low cost options to really try to continue to serve the public that they really are passionate about trying to get them to experience the joys and benefits of being physically active.
Yes, absolutely. We still have a few minutes left, so I'm wondering if there's any final words of wisdom or any final things that you can share that people might find useful?
I would really encourage people to really lock in and focus on how being physically the difference that being physically active can make in how you encounter your day and how you feel, and just to remember that all movement matters, that you don't have to be training like you're preparing for a marathon or some weightlifting event, but every little bit of movement that you do offers you some benefit, and to try to break up long periods of inactivity. So what I would encourage people to do is set an alarm so that, say, roughly every hour or two, you get your alarm goes off, and it's just your little reminder, let's get up and move. If it's just for 5 minutes, just do something. And I think people will be amazed at the significant difference it'll make in how they handle this really kind of stressful, uncertain time that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I actually have a plugin in my browser
Mm-hmm.
with the Pomodoro technique. So
Uh-huh.
it encourages you to take breaks from work, but it will just flash up on the screen and say, take a break.
Yes.
And then
Mm-hmm.
it forces me to like get up, walk around, do something, and just taking that, even just a 5 minute break, it
Mm-hmm.
just it really helps clear my head and make me feel like
Exactly.
I can take on the rest of the day.
It allows you to be a better you so you can handle all the things that we're faced with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Cedric, for
It's
everything.
absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity, Sophie.
Of course, definitely check out the website that Cedric mentioned for more information, and we'll have more videos coming up soon.
Sounds great. Have a wonderful day, Sophie.
You too.